Hello again everybody, and welcome back to part 4 of the unofficial OpenCV 3 Windows 10 installation tutorial. So in this part we're going to compile OpenCV from source, and then we're going to configure that compilation with Visual Studio and Qt. And of course we'll go through an example program in Visual Studio, and then we'll go through an example program in Qt that does not use a graphical front end, and then we'll go through a program, actually we'll do 3 programs in Qt that use a graphical front end that essentially will be similar to the 3 programs we did in the previous part 3, in Visual Studio. So that's a lot to do, so let's go ahead and get into it. So if we go back to the microcontrollers and more GitHub page, so there we go, and OpenCV 3 Windows 10 installation tutorial, and let's go ahead and grab the 4th installation cheat sheet, and then we'll just choose raw here, and so we have it on our desktop. Save as, and desktop. Okay, that's good. And let's see, download has completed, and let's go ahead and we'll just move this down here, and I'll move that right there. That's good. Okay, go ahead and open it up, and we'll start at the top and work our way down here. So here's the table of contents. First we're going to compile OpenCV from source, then configure that with Visual Studio, then we're going to configure with Qt for a non-GUI program, then we're going to cover Qt GUI programs with OpenCV. Okay, so download and install Visual Studio 2013 or 2015 Community Edition, and as of when I'm recording this, OpenCV 3.0.0 is the latest version available, and unfortunately Visual Studio was not yet available as of when OpenCV 3.0.0 was released. Therefore, Visual Studio 2015 could not be tested with OpenCV 3.0.0 before the release. Also, as of the time I'm recording this, the most recent version of Qt only supports Visual Studio 2013, not 2015. So for the moment, we're going to have to stick with Visual Studio 2013. If you're watching this when we're past OpenCV 3.0.0 and to a later version of Qt, then I'm sure you'll be able to use Visual Studio 2013 or 2015, but for the moment we're going to have to stick with 2013. So go ahead and download Visual Studio 2013 if you have not already. And then next step is download the latest 32-bit version of Qt for your version of Visual Studio. So let's take a quick look at that. Let's see here. Open another browser, and if you type Qt, that should take us right there, Qt. And if we choose download, and let's see, we don't really need to worry about all that. Let's go down here to open source, get started. And this is the button you do not want to choose download now, because that will download the auto installer, which if you're using a 64-bit computer, it's going to detect that and it's going to install the 64-bit version of Qt, which for use with OpenCV, honestly, I don't recommend. I found concerns can occur with that, so instead choose this here, view all downloads. And currently the options available, as you see, there's Visual Studio 2013, 12, and 10. There isn't yet a 2015. So the one that we're going to choose is Qt 5.0.0 for Windows 32-bit with Visual Studio 2013. So go ahead and download this and save it, and go ahead and install it. And continuing on with the cheat sheet here, you can go ahead and choose the default options with that installation. Then go ahead and download the latest version of OpenCV, for example 3.0.0, make a folder, C OpenCV, and then the version number. So we covered how to do 3A and B in the previous tutorials, previous 3 parts. I don't think that's necessary to show here, but part 3C is different within OpenCV 3.0.0. So let's bring that up. OpenCV 3.0.0. We're going to make right here a directory, my build. So new and folder and my build. Okay, and continuing on with the cheat sheet. Download and install the latest version of CMake with the Windows 32-bit installer. So I'll just show you what the CMake site looks like for those who haven't seen it before. CMake, and we can go here, and then it'll come up in just a moment. Just give it another second here. There we go, and download. And then this line right here, this is the version of CMake I would suggest. Go ahead and download that. You can use all the default installation options with, and by the way, this is, I should mention point 4b, this is another one of these programs where I found in Windows 10 you should right click on CMake and choose run as administrator rather than double left clicking on it. So continuing on with 4C, during the CMake installation, choose there's an option add CMake to the system path for all users, which is one of the first few screens in the installation if I recall. So you'll definitely want to go ahead and do that so you don't have to add CMake to your path manually. And then after doing all those installs and path changes, definitely do a reboot at that time. And then continuing on step 5A. So in File Explorer, navigate to the Qt bin directory, which should have the various Qt DLLs. So let's take a quick look at that. So if we go to C and then Qt, and again based on Qt version this will be slightly different, but for version 5.5.0 then you're going to go to 5.5 and then MSVC 13, and again once 15 is supported, Visual Studio 2015, that is, 15 will be here as well, but for now it's just 13. And then bin, and then you want to look for the various Qt DLLs, so you have to scroll down a little bit, but these are what you're looking for to make sure that you've got the right bin directory. So once we've verified that we're in the right spot, which we have, then we're going to click up here, do Control C to copy that, and then we're going to right click on Start and go to, let's see, Control Panel, and then System, and then Advanced System Settings, and then Environment Variables. I always recommend choosing this bottom option here so that the path setting affects all users. Then go to Path and Edit, then press either End or the right arrow key continuously until you're at the far right, and then Control V paste in the bin location within Qt. And there we go, and then choose OK and OK and X out of that. And let's see, continuing on with the cheat sheet. Next we're going to reboot. I should mention that this last step was very important because adding the CMake location with those DLLs is what's going to allow, adding the Qt location rather with those DLLs is what's going to allow CMake to find Qt in this next step. So definitely don't skip adding this to the path, and definitely don't skip the reboot, otherwise step 6 won't work. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and reboot. Okay, so now our reboot is complete, so let's go ahead and get right back into the cheat sheet. And let's see, we just did step 5C, so now we're on to step 6A, start CMake. So we'll go ahead and fire that up. And there's CMake, so we can fill out these two boxes at the top. So where is the source code? Let's go ahead and choose Browse Source, and we can go to C, OpenCV 300, OpenCV, and Sources, and choose OK. And I should mention here, if we go to C, OpenCV 300, OpenCV, and Sources, what Qt has to see is this file here, cmakelist.txt. So if this file should be moved to a different location with the future release of OpenCV, you'll have to adjust this path accordingly as you feed it into CMake, but most likely that won't be changed. So continuing on here, now we're on to step 6C, set where to build the binaries. So we're going to set that to C, OpenCV 300, and my build, and then choose OK. And then we're going to press Configure, and next we're going to choose our generator. So we're going to choose Visual Studio 20. Let's see, well, let's take a look at our options here to clarify things a little bit. So we have Visual Studio 14 2015. So if you're using a later version of OpenCV or Qt, you may be able to use Visual Studio 2015 as mentioned earlier, but for the moment we have to stick with Visual Studio 2013. And I really don't recommend going the 64-bit route at this time. I've ran into some compatibility concerns with that, so let's choose the safe option and go with the non-64-bit build, which if it's blank here that means 32-bit. So we'll choose Visual Studio 12 2013 and then use default native compilers and then finish. And just a few moments here while CMake performs some steps. And let's see, we're on step 6E to 6F in the cheat sheet if you're following along, and in just a moment CMake is going to show us a bunch of lines in red, and essentially what CMake is doing is it's proposing, are these the options you would like? And for the most part they are, but we are going to make one change here. We're going to scroll to the bottom and check with Qt, and then we're going to choose Configure again. And now all these lines that were red are now going to be white, but there'll be some additional red lines because what CMake is doing is it's asking, is this a Qt install that you would like us to compile into OpenCV? And yes, it is. And CMake was able to find this Qt install because we specified that in the path variable in the previous step. So now we're going to choose configure and give CMake just a second again, and now everything should be white, so we're going to swipe up and down and verify that. So all white, okay, that's good. And configuring is done, so now we're going to choose generate, and we're going to get a number of warnings, but that's okay. When generating is done, what that's going to do is that's going to make a regular Visual Studio.sln file, and there we go, generating is done. So now we can go ahead and exit. And now if we go to C and then OpenCV 300, and then let's see here, my build, and remember we just made my build a few moments ago. None of this was here, so all this was made by CMake just now. And what we're going to do is we're going to double click on OpenCV.sln, and this is OpenCV, which of course is a huge program. So you see at the bottom it has to initialize projects and parse files. So I'll probably just stop recording here for a second while that happens. Okay, so Visual Studio just completed parsing. So you'll want to go ahead and verify that you have solution configurations up here set to debug, and then solution platform set to Win32, which we do. So then we can go ahead and build solution. And again, OpenCV is a huge program, so this is going to take a few minutes, so I'll probably go ahead and pause the camera at this point. Okay, so our compilation just finished, and we have a number of warnings. That's okay, and the only error that we have is pertaining to Python. So that worked out okay, and we can continue with step 8. So remove any let's go ahead and close out of Visual Studio here first. Okay, so remove any OpenCV directories in your path currently. So for example, if you were following the video from part 1, you're going to have OpenCV 3.0.0, OpenCV build, x86 VC, in this case 12, and then bin, which points to the bin directory for the precompiled binary version of OpenCV. But now that we're using the compiled from source option, we can't have that in the path, or else it'll go to that and then we won't be using our actual compile. So let's go to Control Panel, and then System, and then Advanced System Settings, and then Environment Variables. And of course you have to be careful when you're deleting out of your path variable here for sure. So choose Path and then Edit, and then we're looking for, okay, Qt, that's not it. Okay, mgu, that's not it. Okay, I believe this is it here. C OpenCV 3.0.0, OpenCV build x86, VC12, and bin. Yes, that's the one from the first part of this video series, which we now have to take out because we're going to be using our compile. So delete that, and then choose OK, and then OK, and then OK. Okay, so then after completing the compile from source in the previous step, the compiled OpenCV, the compiled from source OpenCV bin directory should be located at. So let's take a look at that. And let's see here, if we go to C OpenCV 3.0.0, my build, and then bin, and then debug, and there's our successful compile. So if we look down this list here, there's a DLL, there's a DLL, there's a DLL, and we're going to find all the usual OpenCV DLLs are going to be here. So our compile from source was successful. So verify that this directory contains the successfully compiled OpenCV DLLs, which it does. We're on step 8b currently. So then we're going to add this directory to the path. So click up there, Control C to copy, and then we can go back to System, Advanced System Settings, Environment Variables, and Path, and Edit, and then press the right arrow key a number of times, or just press N to go all the way to the right. Add a semicolon and Control V paste in our compile from source path to the OpenCV bin and then debug directory. And there we go. Choose OK, 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 and we can close out of there. So continuing along in the cheat sheet, we just did step 8c, so let's see, or we're doing step 8c now. Pull up a command prompt to verify that that is in the path. And there it is, C OpenCV 300, my build, bin, and debug. So now we can go ahead and do a reboot. So I'm going to close out of everything and stop the video and reboot. Okay, so reboot's complete, so let's go ahead and get back into the part 4 cheat sheet. So as we continue on to part 2 here of the 4th video, this is going to look very similar to the first video. The only difference is we're going to have Visual Studio point to the OpenCV compile we just made rather than the precompiled binaries. So from the microcontrollers and more GitHub page, decide which example you're going to use. Let's see, I'll move the cheat sheet over here. So we'll go here, microcontrollers and more. So let's do cannystill.cpp. That'll work well for us. And then let's see, OpenCV 3 Windows 10 installation tutorial. So then we can do cannystill.cpp and then raw. And then we'll go ahead and start a Visual Studio 2013 and close that. And now we can, let's see, start Visual Studio, make a new project. So file, new project. And then to differentiate from the previous project, let's call this cannystill 2. So Visual C++, Windows 32 console application. So we'll call this cannystill 2. C, Visual Studio 2013 Prog CPP, and those are unchecked. That's good. And then next, uncheck those, check empty project, check or make sure console application is chosen, and choose finish. And then we can make, once that's done, Visual Studio makes our project for us. We can add a C++ file with the same name, so add new item and C++ file, and we're going to name that cannystill2.cpp. There we go. And now we're going to, let's see here, following along the cheat sheet, step 2C and 2D. Okay, right click in Solution Explorer and click Add New Item. We just did that, so step 4. If you're using an example with a still image, which we are, so we have to copy a still image into the directory we just made. So if we go C, Visual Studio 2013 Prog CPP, we can go into cannystill1 and then simply copy image.jpg into cannystill.2. So now cannystill.2 has image.jpg in it as well, and that takes care of the image. So now let's go ahead and paste in the raw code here, Control A, Control C, and go ahead and minimize that, paste that in. We can make that a little smaller, and we're going to get the usual red underlines here because we haven't told Visual Studio where to find our OpenCV compile yet. So now we're going to do that. So in Visual Studio, go to Project, Properties, Configuration Properties, Visual C++ Directories, and then Include Directories. And then we're going to choose Edit, and then we're going to, I'm going to paste in the following include directory from the cheat sheet. Of course, if you're using a different version of OpenCV, that will be slightly different. And note that this is the same include directory as in the first video. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set the lib directory, and the stuff at the bottom here is okay. So now we're going to go to library directories and then edit, and then we're going to paste in, this is the library directory. Again, obviously the 3.0.0 may vary depending on your version of OpenCV. Also notice this is the my build directory. So this is different than in this first video. This is in the my build compile that we just did of OpenCV. And then the stuff at the bottom is okay. And then in File Explorer, so not within Visual Studio, let's see here, so File Explorer, so we're going to navigate to the lib and then debug directory. So C, OpenCV 3.0.0, my build, lib, and debug. And since this is the debug specific directory, we don't have to worry about the libraries ending in D versus not ending in D if it's a release library, but there are these other files here, these EXPs, that we don't need to put into Visual Studio. So what we need to do in, there we go. What we need to do in Visual Studio is go to Linker, Input, and then Additional Dependencies, and then Edit. And in this box, we need to put each of the file names here that ends in d.lib. So that one, that one, that one. And the easiest way to come up with that list, you can copy and paste it out of the cheat sheet if you're using OpenCV 3. It's right here, but I'll show you how to come up with the list in case you're using a future version of OpenCV. So if you do a Control A in this directory and then hold Shift and Control, this is probably the fastest way to do it. Choose Copy as Path, and then open up Notepad, and we don't really need to maximize that. And then paste, and then so we're going to remove, we only would like to keep the lib, so we can remove these exp files, and we don't need these quotes at the end of the lib, so just a few more, and we also don't need the file extensions at the beginning. So now we can simply take out these extra spaces, and I'll just save this file to the desktop in case we need it in the future. So we'll save this as OpenCV comp from source liblist, and make sure to save that to the desktop. And now we're going to copy all those, and let's see, we can close out of here now. We can paste those into additional dependencies and then choose OK and apply and OK, and all the red lines disappeared there. That's certainly a good sign. So we want to make sure that we have debug in Win32 up here, and if I didn't forget anything else, then our program should run successfully here. And there we go, that's certainly a good sign. So there's our original image and our candy image, and we are all set. So we can close out of there and there, and we can go ahead and close out of Visual Studio. So that concludes part 2 of this 4th video. So now we're on to part 3, configuration with Qt for a non-GUI program. Okay, so let's dive right into part 3 here, configuration with Qt for a non-GUI program. So part 1 is a prerequisite to part 3. We already did part 1, no worries there, so we can jump on to step 2. Let's fire up Qt. And actually step 2 is deciding which program we'd like to use. So we're doing a non-GUI Qt program here. You can just choose any to make sure that you've got it working okay. We'll choose candystill.cpp. And then let's see here, if you're interested in an example with a Qt GUI, scroll down to part 4. We'll do that later on in the video, but for now let's stick with this part. So finally on to step 3 here, start Qt Creator, and then choose New Project. So New Project, on the new project screen, choose non-Qt project, and then plain C++ project, and then choose. And on the introduction and project layout screen, choose a name. So for example, I'll just copy out of the cheat sheet here, CandyStill1, and there we go. And then we're going to choose our preferred create in. So we'll create that in CQT Progs. Okay, that sounds good. Use that as the default project location, and then we'll choose next. And then on the kit selection screen, we're going to, let's make this just a little bit bigger here, expand details. And if you were doing a full production grade program, you'd probably want to have a separate debug and release version. For what we're doing, that's not necessary, so let's uncheck the release. And if we created the debug directory, or the build rather, in this directory, that would put that in a different directory than the project files, which were the directories specified on the previous screen, which wouldn't be desirable or necessary for what we're doing today. So if we make this directory the same as was specified on the previous screen, like so, then it'll put everything in one directory, which is more what we're trying to do. So we'll choose next, and then version control, you can just set that to none. We don't need any version control. Choose finish, and let's see here, there's our program. So if we go to sources in main, that's where we already are. So now if we go back to the GitHub site, and this is the raw code for candystill.cpp, so Control A, Control C, and then Control A, Control V. And we're getting these lines at the top because we did not yet tell Qt where to find the installation of OpenCV. So let's see, continuing on with the cheat sheet here. On the project management screen, already did that. Go to main to copy and paste the code, just did that. Okay, so in File Explorer, Windows File Explorer, navigate to your OpenCV live directory. So if we go to C, OpenCV 300, my build, lib, and debug, then make a list of all the file names that end in d.lib. So that's what we did in that previous step, you'll recall, with this text file that we saved to the desktop here, this comp from source liblist.txt. No need to do those steps again. Here's the same files. So let's see, getting back to Qt and the cheat sheet here. Okay, next in Qt Creator, okay, so we just went to the live directory, and then we made a list of the file names, actually we did that previously, that end in d.lib. So next in Qt Creator, we're going to go to our profile. So for example, candystill.pro, so that's going to be up here. And this is what's in there so far. We're going to make some significant additions here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to let Qt know where OpenCV is installed. Let's see, we're going to add the following, making sure to change the libraries per what's present in your lib directory. So the syntax for these is a little bit odd. So for include path, if we were to go to that location here, so see OpenCV 300 OpenCV build, and then include, this is the path that we need to add to here. So we're going to type include path, includepath, and again, we could just copy and paste this out of the cheat sheet, but I'm trying to show you the logic of how this is assembled if you're ever using a different version of OpenCV or a slightly different configuration. So then we're going to, and then plus equals is increments include path, so then we're going to paste in that path that we just had, but a single backslash in the qt.pro files is a line continuation character, so we need to add a second slash to actually make that a slash, and that completes that line, include path. Okay, I'm just double checking something on the cheat sheet here. Yes, there should be a space in between include path and the plus. Okay, so now we're going to enter the following. We're going to enter libs, and then we're going to enter the location of that library directory with some modification. So if we go to OpenCV 300 my build, and then lib, and then debug. Okay, so we're going to paste this path in. Well, we're going to do incremented by, and then dash L for library, and then paste in the path. But then, same as before, we have to change each of the single backslashes to a double. And then at the end, we're going to add a space and then another backslash. And now we need to add each of those library names. So that was this text file from earlier, you recall, all the libs in that one directory. And then we're going to paste those in here, and then let's add a space in front of each one just to make it a little easier to read. And we're almost there. And just a few more. And there we are, and it's always a good idea to add an extra space at the end of these files. Now a few more syntax changes. To signify that these are libraries, note that we added the line continuation character at the end here. So to signify that these are libraries, we're going to add a dash and then an L at the front of each of these. So we'll just copy the dash L and then paste it over and over and over. And then the next thing we're going to need to do is we need to add a line continuation character, because this effectively all has to go on one line, but it would be essentially impossible to read if we did that. So we're going to add a space and then a backslash at the end of each of these, except for the last one. So whoops, auto complete there was popping up there. We're not trying to do that. There we go. So add that, add that, add that, add that, and we're almost there. And of course we don't add a line continuation for the last line because we don't need to continue the last line to anything else. And then save. And now if we go back to main, and there's one more thing we need to do. I just remembered we need to add the image.jpg to that directory. So if we go to Visual Studio 2013 Programs, this is just so we can copy it. We go into CPP and then either of these that already have the image, so then we'll do copy image.jpg, and now we'll go to Qt Progs, Canny Still 1, and paste that into there. And notice that the underlines for the libraries there disappeared. That's certainly a good sign. Let's go ahead and run it. And if you get unusual or illogical errors like this, I don't know why Qt does this sometimes, because we're pretty confident that we have that correct. Actually, I take that back. I made a mistake. You don't want to include the lib here, so we have to delete the libs as well. Good thing the compiler caught that for me, I suppose. Okay, just bear with me another moment here. Lib, and again, I could copy and paste this out of the cheat sheet, but for the next version of OpenCV, if there's significant changes, I figured it was worth people out there seeing how this list was actually put together, because of course for OpenCV 3.1 or 3.0.1, whatever the next release may be, these will all change. At a minimum, they're going to change because the 300 will then be either 310 or 301, depending on what the next number of the release is. And some libraries might be added or removed as well. Okay, go ahead and save it. And if we go back to main.cpp and run it, okay, and it's giving us the same illogical error. We know we just fixed that. So if we go to build and then clean all, and then build and then run qmake, and now if we run it again, I bet it'll run. There we go. So that build, clean all, and build and then clean all rather, and then build and then run qmake. That's an important thing to keep in mind. If you ever have to update references, you usually have to do that to get the reference update to take. So here we are. Here's our original image, and there's our candy edge image. So that completed the third part of this fourth video. So we can go ahead and close this. And now we are on to part 4, configuration with Qt for a GUI program. Okay, so continuing on here, we're on the fourth part of the fourth video, configuring with Qt for a GUI program. So part 1 is a prerequisite to part 4. We already did part 1. Start Qt Creator and make a new project. So Qt Creator Community. And then on the new project screen, so let's see, a new project, choose Application, and then Qt Widgets Application, and then choose. And then on the Introduction and Project Location screen, choose a name as preferred. So for example, I'll just copy and paste out of the cheat sheet here. Let's see, Canny still with Qt GUI 1. Okay, that's good. Then choose your preferred create in location, so CQT Progs. Okay, that sounds good. And then on this screen, we're going to do the same as we did in the previous program, uncheck release, and then we're going to change this path and file name to be the same as on the previous screen, so we only get one directory. That's really all we need. And class information screen, we're going to change the class name to FRM main, so let's go ahead and do that, FRM main. And even though we typed in a capital M here, Qt makes it lowercase here and here and here automatically. I really recommend not changing header file, source file, and form file. Leave those defaults as Qt Creator prefers to make them. And then base class, we want to verify that's set to QMain window, and generate form is checked. There we go. And then next, and then make sure version control is set to none, and then choose finish. And on the project management screen, okay, that's what we just did. So in Windows File Explorer, navigate to step 8 here in the cheat sheet if you're following along. This basically is just a repeat of what we just did. So you could open, actually probably the best way to do this, because people might be using various versions of OpenCV in the future, so I'll go ahead and save and close out of that. And then let's just make a file on the desktop here and call it, let's see, what do we want to call it, Qt Pro Config maybe, or Qt Pro Editions, ADDITIONS. And then if we go to C, and then Qt Progs, and then Canny still 1, so this is the successful program from the previous run. We're going to double click on Canny still 1 Pro, and there we go. And then this is the working include path and libs from the previous program, so we're just going to copy that, and then we're going to paste that into Qt, whoops, just jumped over to the other screen here. We're going to paste that into Qt Pro Editions just so that we don't have to type that out each time. I'm going to put that in the other screen. Okay, so now we can go back to Canny still with Qt GUI 1, which is what we were just starting a moment ago. Okay, so now we have our form, which was made for us automatically, and then if we go back to edit, we have our main CPP file. We're not even going to need to change that. And then form main, we're going to change that, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Form main.h we're also going to change. But first, let's get the .pro file updated. So we're on step 8 here, which basically just says to edit the profile the same as we did previously. So we'll just go ahead and copy this here and put that right there and save. And now we're on to step 9. So on the left side, choose design, or you can just double click on the form. There we go. And then for the program we're doing today, if you need a menu bar, main toolbar, status bar, you can keep those obviously, but we'll remove those. We're not going to need those for what we're doing today. So remove, and let's see here, perform the same steps. Okay, so that was step 10, A and B, and then step 11 is we can start putting some controls on our form now. So if we go to the GitHub, back to the GitHub main page for this repository, and then we're going to have three programs here: Canny Still with Qt GUI, and then we're going to do Canny Webcam with Qt GUI, and then Red Ball Tracker with Qt GUI. So let's start with Canny Still with Qt GUI, and then we're going to go into Raw to make copying and pasting easier. And the first thing we're going to do is add these widgets to the form here. So we're going to put a button on the form here, so push button, open file. Okay, that's good, and we'll name them as we're putting them on here, so button, open file. And then we're going to add a label. So let's see here, label, let's make that a little bit bigger, and then we can call that label chosen file. And then we're going to have a label, which is how we show images in Qt. So that's going to be label original, and then okay, copy and paste here, and then we're also going to have label Canny, and that's going to go right there. And there we are. And then for each of the labels, I like to choose those and then highlight this autofill background property, or choose rather, I should say, the autofill background, and we don't need any text there. That way you can see where the labels are on the form a little bit better. And you don't have to get the locations of these perfect, just get them roughly where you'd like them, because the Qt form layout tools are absolutely excellent, and they will assist us with kind of placing things a little bit better on the form. So we just want to get it close to begin with. So let's choose the label on the top and the push button, and then for the font we're going to set that to something nice and big like 12. That'll work, and then save. And for the push button we can just double click on it and type open file. And for the label we don't need any text by default. Okay, so let's just check where we are in the cheat sheet here. So depending on which the above examples you're using, the applicable widgets, okay, place the widgets on your form. Okay, so we'll go ahead and finish sizing these. So actually let's first choose the two, what's going to end up showing the images. Of course they're labels. So let's see, if we scroll down here and we choose frame shape, let's choose box so we can see where those are. And then for alignment, let's make both horizontal and vertical centered. Okay, so here's where these really nice Qt layout managers are of tremendous help. Let's select the button and the label on the top here, and then we choose layout horizontally. And then if we restretch that, now we'd like to make the button the smallest size possible to fit the text. We're going to choose layout stretch here, and we're going to make that 0,1. There we go, and that properly sized the button down. And next we're going to highlight the two labels here, and we're going to choose layout horizontally and then resize that, and that makes those a 50-50 split, just how we like. Now if we click anywhere just out to the right here, just so long as we're not actually clicking on a widget, and then we click on this here, layout in a grid, okay, so that's good. But now we'd like to make the images bigger and the components at the top, or widgets I should say, proportionally smaller. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose this here central widget and then row stretch to 0,1, and there we go. So now we should be able to fire up our program and make sure everything we've done so far works, and just check our form, kind of resizes how we'd like it to. Yep, okay, that looks good. We can even maximize it and everything. Okay, so now we have our form all set. Let's go ahead and just make that a little bigger. And continuing on with the cheat sheet here, so set widget properties as shown in the video or as desired. We just did that for any button with an associated event. Okay, so here's where we have to do the events. So if we click on the button and then make sure we have it named correctly, button open file. So then if we right click on the button and then go to slot and then make sure that's on clicked and then choose OK, and that will write the button open file click event for us. In frm.h it puts the function prototype, and then in frm main.cpp it puts the actual function itself. So let's see, continuing on with the cheat sheet here. So we did the click event, so now copy and paste the remaining portions of the code only, and we don't want to copy and paste over any code that Qt creator has written for us so far. So this is referring to the raw code again, so we're basically just going to go down here and copy and paste in for both the .h file and the .cpp file any code that's not there already. So let's start with the .h. So .h. Okay, so if not defined, define, include, and then we have 3 includes to add up here. And then for namespace, let's go ahead and just a moment here, bear with me while I resize in the next window here. There we go. And we'll paste in some comment lines here and just sort of respace that a little bit. And then we'll do that, and then frm main, and we don't need this extra space here. QObject, okay, public, so constructor, destructor, private slots, button up, open file underscore click, that's good. That matches up, so we only need to add one more item here, the function prototype for the function to convert from an OpenCV image to a Q image so that we can show the result on those labels that we added to the form. And let's just delete that extra space, and there we go. And now if we go to form main.cpp, so the top's good. We have to copy in Q file dialog and Q core, and those will go right there. And let's just respace this a little bit, and respace that, and respace that, and we can copy in the comment over the constructor, which is right there. And then the destructor, which goes right there, and let's respace that a little bit. And then we can copy in the comment line on top of the button click, and respace that. And now we can copy in the body of the button click, which is going to go right there. And let's just add a few extra lines here, and then we're going to copy in the last function, which is to convert. That was what I mentioned earlier for the function prototype. This converts from an OpenCV image to a Q image so we can display on the label. And if I didn't forget anything, and there we go, that's certainly a good sign. And open file, and you could use any image here. So let's see, where's image.jpg? Right there, and there we go, we're all set. So that completes the first program. And if we go back to here, so we have 2 more programs to do, and as you see, these really don't take that long. So we have Candy Webcam with Qt.GUI and Red Ball Tracker with Qt GUI, so we might as well go ahead and do both of those. So raw, and then we'll close out of this here, and then we really don't need this open, so start Qt Creator. And I'll just work my way down the cheat sheet again to make sure I don't forget anything. Okay, so new project, and then the name I'll just copy and paste. I'm copying and pasting out of the GitHub raw code here. So let's see, on the new project screen, choose application and QWidgets application, and then choose on the introduction and project screen, so name is preferred, so we'll call it Candy Webcam Qt1, and that location's good. Next, and then show the details, uncheck release, make that the same as the previous screen, that's good. And then let's see, what step are we on here? We're on class information, so I'll copy and paste frm main here, and QMain window, that's checked, don't change any of the others, but for what Qt creator already created for us, already changed it for us, I should say, per the class name change we made. And then choose next, and that should be none, and then choose finish, and there we go. Okay, so now we can add in the profile again, so that's this Qt Pro Editions cheat sheet file we made a moment ago, so we can just copy that in, so there, and then add an extra line, and that's good. Now we can do our form design. So this is a pretty easy form, we just have 2 things to add, a label original and a label canny. So let's go ahead and make this a little bigger. We can remove these things here that we don't need, remove, remove and remove, and let's go ahead and add our two labels now. So label, and we'll go ahead and name it now, label original, go ahead and resize it, and label canny, go ahead and add that, so resize it, and now we can choose both of those labels, and then we can check this box here, autofill background, so we can see things a little better, and resize the form there, and move both of those. We don't need any text in there. And let's choose some properties for both of the labels. So let's see, frame shape, we'll choose box, and frame shadow, we don't want to change that, but horizontal, let's change that to center, and then save it, and then draw a box around both of those, and then lay out horizontally, and then expand that more or less to fill the form. Doesn't have to be exact, just get it close. Click somewhere on the form, and then click layout in a grid, and there we go. And let's save it, and if we run the program so far, let's just make sure we have a working form and the program runs. Okay, program ran okay, and yep, our label is resized nicely with our form, so that's good. So there aren't any events that we have to worry about in this program, so we can go right into edit and then expand headers and sources and copy and paste in the code that isn't there already. So let's see, we're going to have our usual three includes. So if not defined, if defined, include Q main window. Then we're going to add our three OpenCV includes, and then we're going to add this comment line here, and then space that a little bit differently, add another comment line, and then we're going to just respace that slightly. So we have Q object, and then we have a function prototype, process frame, and update GUI. So this is actually going to be a public slot. Those of you who are familiar with Qt will recognize signals and slots are essentially the Qt terminology for what you would call events in Visual Studio. So continuing on here, here's the constructor and destructor, and then private after the pointer to the form widgets. We have some more code to paste in here. And okay, I didn't quite copy and paste that right. Just bear with me another second. Okay, what if we do this? There we go, that's much better. Delete one of these blank lines here. And now we can go to form_main.cpp. And let's see, so that's good at the top there, form_main.h, UI main.h. And then we're going to copy and paste in QCore and QMessage box. Then we're going to put the comment line over the constructor and the destructor. And then we're going to respace a few things here. So let's do that. And there we go, all set there, and then we're all set there. And let's take out this blank space. Okay, and in the constructor we're going to set up the webcam and start a timer for it. So let's go ahead and paste that in. We don't want to, definitely don't want to touch this UI setup this line, otherwise that'll cause a concern with all the components. Probably the program wouldn't even start at all. So we definitely don't want to touch that, and then we want to paste in right there. Okay, just bear with me another second, I didn't copy and paste that correctly. Okay, working in the other screen for just another second here. So if we grab all of that, trying to get the spacing right, there we go, that's much better. Okay, we don't need that blank line, and yep, that's all set. Okay, the destructor we don't need to touch. Then we have an exit program function to put in. Go ahead and paste that in, just two-line function, that's pretty straightforward. Now process frame and update GUI, we can paste in the entire function. And let's just add a few more lines at the bottom here. Give ourselves some room to work with, and now the function to convert from an OpenCV image to a Qt image to show on the labels. And just one final sweep upward here, and if I didn't forget anything, that should go ahead and start and run, and yep, there we go, there I am in my apartment. And so now we can close that, and we can now do the final program. Might as well run through here. These don't take but another maybe 5-10 minutes or so each to do. So down to the last one here, red ball tracker with Qt GUI.cpp, and then raw. And and then we can pretty much follow all the same steps here. So go ahead and fire up Qt, and of course I'll just follow along in the cheat sheet to make sure I don't miss a step. So start Qt Creator, choose New Project. On the New Project screen, choose Application and Qt Widgets Application, and then choose. And on the Introduction and Project Location, okay, yeah, there we go. So we got to get the name. So we'll call this Redball Tracker Qt1, and then the usual location. That's fine. And then here we can choose Details and Uncheck Release, and make that name so that's the same as the previous screen. Yes, okay, just doing a final double check there. Next. And now form main.h, copy this out of the cheat sheet to make sure I don't typo it. Form main. And there we go. So notice as before we have the uppercase M we pasted in, but Qt Creator makes these all lowercase. I would really suggest just go ahead and leave that how Qt Creator thinks is best. And base class, we're going to leave that as QMainWindow, leave generate form checked. And next, and we don't need any version control, and then choose finish. And this should look pretty familiar by now. So the first thing we can do is edit the .pro file. So we can take our cheat sheet for that we made earlier here, and then we can paste that in there and save. And now we can design our form. So if we minimize this, and then we can remove these unnecessary widgets here. Let's see, remove and then remove. And now working from the raw code, we have, it looks like 4 components to place on this form here. So we have label original, so that's going to show an image that's going to go up there. Might as well go ahead and name it now. So label original. And then let's see what's next, label thresh. So then we can drag another label over here. And then we'll go ahead and name that label thresh, and then button pause or resume. So buttons are back up here, so push button, I'm going to put that down there, and then we'll name that button pause or resume. And then text XY radius, that is going to be a Q plain text edit. Plain text edit, there we go, and we're going to drag that across there, and we're going to name that text XY radius. And let's go ahead and change some font sizes here. So we're going to change that font size to 12 and then OK. And let's double click on these 2 labels here. We don't need the text there, of course. And then for the labels, I personally find it a lot easier to design them if you check this autofill background property so you can see where everything is. And let's change a few other properties as well. So we'll change frame shape to box, and then horizontal to, let's see, align horizontal center. Yep, and then align vertical center. That's good. Okay, and then for the button text, by default, we're going to make this space pause, P-A-U-S-E, and then another space. And that's good. And we'll pick a nice height for it, maybe about like that. And this can occupy essentially the rest of the space. And let's see, did we choose a font for that as well? Yes, we did, but that's going to be declaring coordinate, going to be showing coordinates on top of each other. So let's choose a fixed width font. Courier News, always a good choice. And our form's kind of coming together here, so let's space these about like so, and then we can highlight both labels and then choose layout horizontally, and then more or less stretch this about like that. Again, you don't have to get it perfect. The form designer is really very intelligent in Qt. As long as you just get it close, it'll figure out what you're trying to do usually. So then we can highlight those and do layout horizontally, and whoops, need to expand our form a little bit more. And now we can go ahead and resize that like that, and you see Qt did an outstanding job of remembering that we'd like to keep the button that size and then make the text edit fill up the rest of the space. So then we can go ahead and resize the form there, and then click pretty much anywhere on the form that isn't where there's already a widget. So like over here will work, and then we'll choose layout in a grid, and then we're going to choose up here central widget, and then scroll down to here. Layout row stretch, I believe, is what we're looking for. So let's make maybe the image box is 80%, and then the pause button and the display at the bottom maybe 20%. So we'll do 8, 2. There we go, that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and fire the program up and just move our form around a little bit and verify that everything resizes how we intended. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so now we can go ahead and make the form a little bigger. Now that we're done designing it, we can drag it over this other stuff here and then save and then edit, and then we can go to form main.h and copy and paste in the remainder of the code. So we have our usual 3 includes here. So if not define, if define, and QMain window, just making sure those are the same. They are. So we'll copy and paste in our usual 3 includes, kind of change the spacing around here a little bit, move that around. That's good. So put in a few comment lines here. So 1, 2, and okay, QObject is the same. Let's see, we don't need to change anything within there. QObject is fine. We do need to put in a slot for the button. Actually, I did forget the button from the design view. So if we go to the button and then make sure it's named correctly, pause or resume. Yep, so then right click on that and then choose go to slot and then double click on clicked, and there we go. And so this is form main.cpp. It just started to write that for us, but also in form main.h. So going back to the top of the beginning of the class here, so QObject, then we should have public slots, which is process frame and update GUI, and the environment unfortunately can't do that for us, so we have to copy and paste that in. Then under public explicit, so constructor destructor, that's good. Then private slots, the environment just made that event for us, and then private, and then we have a few more lines to paste in here. So right there we'll paste those lines in, and we don't need that blank space at the bottom. And then save, and then form main, and we're going to add those first 2 includes are good, but then we have to add 2 more, and let's change some spacing here a little bit, and we'll do that and that and that, and just a few more minor spacing changes here. And now we're going to put in the comment line for the constructor and the destructor, and that's there. And then we're going to put in the comment line for the pause or resume click event, and then we're going to put in a exit program function there. But before we go any further, we have more constructor to update. Again, we have to do essentially the setup with the webcam in the constructor, and we also set up a timer there as well. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that in. So that's good, and we don't need that extra space. That's good. And okay, so we have exit program in there. The destructor we didn't have to change. So the entire process frame and update GUI function, we can just copy that in one shot. So right there we're going to paste that in, and then just let's give ourselves a few more spaces here to work with. And then we have our function to convert from an OpenCV image to a Q image, so we can display on the label. And then the pause or resume click event, so let's just relocate that from here down to here, and then we're going to copy and paste. Again, this is the one that the designer started that for us, so now we're going to copy and paste in the body of it like so, and save it. And if I didn't forget anything, grabbing the red ball now, anticipating that hopefully that will, yep, there we go. Okay, so you can see we're getting some great tracking here. Let's just check the pause function. So pause, I'm still moving the ball, but as you can see the screen successfully paused. Start it again, pause it, and resume. And there we go. So that completes all 4 parts of the updated OpenCV 3 and Windows 10 unofficial installation tutorial. Hopefully everybody out there found this beneficial, and I'll see everybody in the next video. I'm not sure what I'm going to cover next. I have some various ideas in mind. Maybe going to get more back in the hardware direction, maybe do some more with OpenCV. I'm not sure, so if anybody has any feelings one way or the other, or any particular ideas that maybe they would like to see, please feel free to post in the comments below. Also, please rate and subscribe, and if you found this video helpful, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Any donations would be greatly appreciated, and I'll see everybody in the next one.